Hello and welcome to Kemet Capital, the community of holders and seekers of African capital. I'm your host, JS, and before we start, guys, we begin with our word of affirmation, our guiding principle, which is none other than the Cobb-Douglas production function. And our way to make Africa great again is through economic strength, economic might, and economic power. In order for us to achieve that, guys, we need to produce more in a more efficient way. So the topic of today's reaction pertains to the total factor of productivity, which is the change in output, not from input. All right, we're going to jump onto this video, guys, that I want to share with you and maybe react. Let's jump in.
Nigeria has established a national integrated electricity policy, a blueprint aimed at reshaping the country's power sector. Now, the implementation of the policy has already commenced, with the policy addressing key issues impacting the growth of the sector. George Etomi, founder of George Etomi and Partners, joins me for this discussion and more. George, thank you so much. Pleasure to have
Thank
you
you, Esther.
in the studio with us. Of course, first question, what do you make, what initial reaction to this? We know it's been, of course, backed by the Revised Electricity Act of 2023, right?
Yeah, it's good that we are having a policy straight out of the new law because at times the way.
All right, guys, just to give you a quick background. So the Electricity Act of 2023, the main of that policy was the enhancement of the sector governance in the electricity productivity and production in Nigeria. Also promote renewable energy, improve infrastructure, support energy efficiency, and foster inclusivity in terms of gender equality, social inclusion, and local content development into the energy sector. So this is the background of the National Integrated Electricity Policy of Nigeria that was adopted actually in 2025, recently.
Period between when a law is enacted and then a policy directive is given can leave gaps that would create disturb market confidence in the sector. So this is good. But what does it really recognize in this particular case? It's looking at the Act, don't forget, has introduced new players into the entire value chain.
Right.
The states are coming in full blend. I believe Lagos State just recently announced that, in fact, they recently confirmed members of the State Electricity Regulatory Commission, with marching orders essentially to make Lagos State, the regulation robust enough to attract the kind of investments that could impact on tariffs, because tariff is the elephant in the room. And then
I think when he talks about tariff, he's talking about the price of electricity that the consumer is buying, not tariffs in terms of.
it recognizes newer sources of electricity, renewables principally. So, and you need to deal with all those regulations, mini grid regulations, and all those things that will enable you providing electricity without necessarily going through the grid. Like we've always discussed, evacuating electricity has been a major challenge of the sector since privatization.
And I agree. And in my opinion, guys, that aspect of energy production has to be developed on a micro level. You know, solar panel on the roof of your house and produce energy for your own consumption, or at the top on the roof of your plant or warehouse and produce your own energy. So you're not relying on the government, but also you can sell the extra power that you're not consuming. So in terms of micro level production, I'm all for it.
The installed generating capacity is nearly 13,000 megawatts, but we're still struggling with the ability of the grid to will more than 5,000. At times it gets to 6,000, it gets strained, goes right back and down. And if you recall, one of the privatization was that it would provide the distribution companies at least 5,000 megawatts of electricity. Right. This is 2013. When 2025, we're still talking about the same number. Just gives you an idea of where we are. So if something is not done to make the grid a bit more robust, then whatever plans you have will undermine these policies.
All right, guys, we're going to stop here for a minute. And this video actually got me thinking of the important factor, the type of infrastructure that have a reliable source of energy, right? So I'm just going to share this quick diagram that I put together. Let's go back here. All right. So to me, those are the key components of electrical infrastructure, right? So you have your power transmission. So no, it's first. Go straight to the power transmission. Let me just go maybe the circles here. You start by generating power, right? So you have your hydropower, you have your solar plants, you have your thermal plants. A lot of countries are using natural gas for the energy production. So that's the front end of the value chain. Then you have the transmission lines. So those are the high voltage lines that transport electricity from power plant to the distribution centers. They include the transmission lines, 110 kilovolt to 765. You have the substations, the transformers, and the green control centers. Then you move on to the distribution line. So the distribution line is a medium to low voltage, and it delivers the electricity from the transformers to the homes and businesses. So you have the distribution, substations, the lines, the pole transformers, street level transformers, smart meters, and circuit breakers. So that's the element that you find in your house. You have the meters and so forth. And then more recently, you have the backup generator, because in terms of peak consumption, you need to be able to um, store the energy generated by power, and the only way to do that it's through batteries. So you need to have like some sort of battery capacity in order for you to sustain the demand when you have peak consumption, like at night when all the household are making their food using the oven, running the washing machine. I'm not sure it's very common in Africa, but we just going to assume that most of the activity that requires electricity, everybody like uses them at the same time. Like for offices, we have working hours, so the grid is kind of putting on the stress on the during those hours. So you need backup generators in case. You need control centers. Those are the grid management and control systems to monitor and manage the flow of electricity, same as the control centers. And one of the final element that for me, is very relevant in our context in Africa, because we don't have, the transmission lines. We don't have the distribution lines everywhere. I know for a fact that my country of origin, not my country of origin, my country, because I don't have any other country, we have a power plant that is being constructed, that is being built right now by a foreign country, a foreign European country. But then we don't have the transmission lines. We don't have the distribution lines. We don't have enough of them. We have some, but we don't have enough for the capacity of power that this plant will be able to generate. But the GC, the general contractor, as soon as the power is able to generate, as soon as you've achieved like a comprehensive completion of the plant, they're going to start selling the power, regardless if you're able to transport that power to the household. So they don't care. So in order for us to kind of achieve like that economic strength and power through power generation, it has to be micromanaged on the micro level. Every houses should have like solar panels on their roofs. You should have like wind turbines able to generate like wind energy and so forth. Renewable energy in Africa, we have enough sun year round, mostly in most region of Africa. Year round, we have to kind of the same amount of energy that we receive from the sun. So we need to invest in those activities. All right, guys, let's go back to the video. I just wanted to point that out.
Yes, you want to do mini grids, off grid solutions, and all that. The lead
Exactly.
time
Off-grid
is a few
solutions.
years.
Right, I
So
was
it's not
going to
going
ask about that. I mean, on paper,
yeah.
obviously, it's good. I mean, provides comprehensive, clear guidelines for, power generation distribution.
And guys, we already know us in Africa, we do a lot of microphone work, a lot of policies, a lot of work, but very few implementation. So crossing my fingers that for Nigeria, this comes through and comes to life.
And all of that. But obviously, there are still issues
Absolutely.
that are happening right now. And one of those issues, I heard the power minister say, was around the debt for being owed the generation companies, 4 trillion naira. And I know there's going to be a meeting between the government and the Gencos.
Wow.
And there's been assurances made by the federal government that
Guys, 4 trillion
this debt will be cleared, a
in debt.
significant portion, while others will be maybe through promissory notes in
I
the
mean,
next
those are
6 months.
nairas, but
So those
still.
are just one of those main issues, within on the value chain. Can we address this issue head on?
It has to be addressed head on, and it should have been addressed head on. If you remember from the early days of privatization, there was always the issue of what they call subsidy, the difference between what was considered the cost-reflective tariffs and what the government said.
Yes, and because guys, power is such a complicated industry because it's critical for the nation's survival. And we all know that when we have power outages, nobody's happy. It's a strain. It's causing like it's a mental stress. And imagine for an economic actor, like you have your plant, you have your warehouse, and there's no power for you to run your machinery or your line, your production line. You're gonna lose your mind. So it's critical for us that this sector of our industry, of our economy, takes precedence over like highways. For me, it doesn't make sense for a country to have highways and you guys have power outages. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Power outages, it's critical for the industry, it's critical for the social development of the country. So those are, those are fulcrum for economic development, at least in my opinion. And actually, it's not only my opinion. If you look at the industrial revolution, it started with the steam engine. So it started with generation more power than, you know, uh, physical power generation.
Electricity should be sold for.
Talking about muscles.
That debt usually occurs at the generation end because the distributors collect money, but the electricity is generated anyway.
Right.
They, on their own, also rely on their primary feeds. In the case of the thermal plants, it's gas. In the case of hydro, it's water. And if the generating companies are unable to pay their gas producers, then there's a problem.
It's no
And
electricity.
in this particular case, it's a moving target because no sooner do you clear one debt, it piles up again.
That's why, again, we have to micromanage our production on the micro level, like household level. Solar panel on the roof, wind turbine somewhere on the roof, generate energy for your house, maybe for your neighborhood, and you can distribute the overproduction to the rest of the grid. That can go to industry, that can go to hospitals, that can go to public lights and so forth.
Because if you look at the overall performance of the sector, you are not collecting enough money from consumers because on paper, it is the money you get from consumers that goes to feed the entire value chain.
Right.
We've
Exactly.
never gotten to that stage where we've attained parity.
Wow, that's huge. So in terms of the cost of electricity, I'm assuming it's heavily subsidized if you're not even charging uh, that you're charging to your customer is not even the price that you're incurring to produce the energy. So, well, all in all, very bad situation. I understand why they started the Electricity Act.
In fact, it's been a abysmal performance when it comes to that. And that was why there was the attempt to quadruple under this banding system.
Right. So sorry to butt in. So if this is going to work, because this, I'm not sure. I mean, this says right. We have a clearer path. Blueprint, etc. So you're saying that none of this would make any sense unless for instance, in the case of the Gencos, these debts are cleared
because
as soon as possible.
Yeah, the Gencos also borrow.
Right.
Now, the principal complaint of many of them is that they've become bad news to their bankers. So they're not willing to give them, because this 4 trillion built up over time.
Right.
It's a
So the
huge
fact that
debt,
they
guys.
were still getting credit meant that the bankers were buying their story. But at some point, somebody's going to say no. Otherwise, if they fall, they will bring their banks crashing. And then don't forget, there will be no incentive for the gas producers, who actually, by the way, have alternatives. Right. They will export their gas.
Right. I mean, still on the issue of subsidies, I mean, recently the Prime Minister also did say, I mean, the narrative is changing now. He says, subsidies have to go. But then there will still be targeted subsidies for those on the lower end of the curve on the electricity chain. What does that mean? Because, I mean, we have the bands now, band A, B, and all of that, and many customers are paying higher than before. What does that? Yes, obviously there should be cost-reflective tariff, but what does that mean for the sector if the government goes ahead to implement that?
A number of things. First and foremost, when the banding system was introduced and they quadrupled the band A consumers, they did nothing to bands B, C, D, and E.
It seems like they have a tier type of pricing system where the high consumers are priced at different level depending on consumption level. That's what it seems like.
So which meant you just selected a tiny proportion of the consumers that you felt could afford it and downloaded some of these subsidies on them.
Probably
I
a
didn't think
business
at the
sector.
time that it was a good policy. There should have been a way you should have been able to spread it. Maybe you can still save the lowest of the lowest, but still spread it across the bands, except for maybe bands E.
It shouldn't
D,
penalize the actual
who just have minimal use for electricity. But what you've just done
producer
is that
value.
by pressurizing only the band A guys, some things, I'm sure some unplanned effects came about. Many of them have actually gone off grid.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Exactly, guys. If I'm an economic actor and now, I create value for the country, I create wealth with my physical capital, my machineries and so forth. Now, because I create capital, of course, I'm going to use more energy. The government is trying to recoup their subsidy through me by increasing my rate. I'm going to find an alternative. I'm going to put a solar panel on the roof of my plant, and basta with you guys. I produce my own electricity. It costs me way cheaper. It's more reliable, and screw you guys.
Systems and are paying minimally. So in a sense, the revenue we're expecting, the revenue gush you're expecting, isn't coming. And yet, you still have other bands who are enjoying maybe just as much electricity. Because
but do you think that could change? Because when the minister says
I'm hoping when we get flesh to whatever he's saying, we will see some degree of uniformity in spreading it out. But what is even by far more critical is please fix the grid.
Yes.
Because
yes. If your grid is not reliable, you're just increasing the price. What's the point? I'm going to find for another reliable alternative that is mostly cheaper. You increase the price outage. Make it make sense. Focus on strengthening, bolstering your grid with the transformation lines, the power of all those lines. And then you go out there and increase the price. Make your system more reliable. We need a better distribution network. We need a better transmission network, a better grid management, and then you raise the price.
if the grid is unable to will power,
Exactly.
no matter what anybody pays you, you are not going to satisfy the customer.
When you say fix the grid, what is this? What kind of timeline are we looking at? Is this something that can be done in weeks, months? When you say fix the grid?
Well, it's a continuous thing. They've started, by the way,
It's months.
It's a continuous thing. Because that's why I said they attained 6,000 megawatts, but in the last few weeks, like we know, there have been hiccups here and there with a lot of their major transmission lines. They must fix it. The truth is we don't really have any options.
Yeah.
There are no options. So they have to fix it so
You
that
have to
in the
fix it.
medium to long term, they at least in the minimum satisfy those customers who you are making pay a lot for electricity. Today, many
Yeah.
band A customers will tell you they're not getting up to 20 hours as was promised, and they don't even know the recourse for them. And then, secondly, they're spending more on diesel now. So their overall electricity spend has gone up, which
Without
is
commensurate supply,
without
right?
you saying it. But if it's any good news, based on my experience being a part of the industry, is that if people find electricity, they will pay for it. Because
Yeah.
it's a simple
It's
arithmetic
critical.
you do. If
You
you
need
look at
you
it,
need power, guys. You need power as an economy. You need to be able to power your house, to power your plant, to power. You need that. Look at China. Look at what China did, and the electrical revolution in China. It's because they want to get rid of their dependence on oil. They're not an oil producing country, but they have a lot of renewable energy generation capability. With the hydro, they have the biggest dam in the world, the Three Gorge. Mm. They have like solar, they have like wind. They recently, a couple of months ago, they inaugurated the largest uh, wind farm in the world. So they're building their electrical capability. And for an economic, might and powerhouse, you need power, man. Guys, we need to be able to have power generation capability that are reliable and sustainable as well.
your global electricity spend, whether it's on diesel, petrol, fixing your generator, electricity, it's very high. So if you can get one source that
Yeah.
gives you good power, even if it comes more expensive than it is today, but
If
then
it's
you
reliable,
save
if
on
it's
all
good
the others,
quality.
net, you're a winner. You will
Hmm.
do so. But that's the mathematics we all need to work out.
All right.
And finally, how does the government pay the 4 trillion? I still advocate that they should look at government expenditure. I think it's still too high. They must do some drastic cuts. The
Yeah.
government is thinking about giving bonds or
Promissory
promissory
notes.
notes in addition to the payments. Fine, but your promissory notes must be backed
Right.
in a
Something
manner that
tangible.
lenders will accept it.
Mm.
But critically, they must begin to look at how they can cut
Expenditure.
expenditure.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Tomei. Pleasure having you on the show with us today.
pleasure.
That was Georgia Tomei, founder of Georgia Tomei and Partners, looking at latest updates in Nigeria's power sector.
All right, guys. That's the end of the video. Let me know what you think in the comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.